Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with host Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe and share so you never miss an episode. Search for us on your favorite podcast app, or you can find the podcast on jimmyhinton.org and findingahealingplace.com. Please rate our show, subscribe, and share so we can spread the word. If you would like to support us and get exclusive rewards, go to patreon.com/speakingout. Find a tier that best fits you and join as a patron of the podcast. Now let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's episode with host Jimmy Hinton.
And Jimmy's mom, Clara. Hi, Jimmy.
Well, hi, Granny.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, we, as always, thank our patrons who make this podcast possible. We've had a couple new patrons this past week, so for those of you who are listening, man, we really appreciate you. Every time, in fact, my phone just dinged a couple minutes ago.
Yes.
About one of our new patrons. I'm not going to mention names because I won't put anybody on the spot, but you guys are the backbone of this podcast.
Thank you
legitimately
so much.
Make
Yes,
it happen.
thank you so very much. We do appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Okay, episode 155. Are my kids safe at school? Checklist. Like the previous episodes, we're just going to jump right in here. Number 1, does the school have good and consistent security measures in place? Somebody who lives in a small town, we have a small school district, small town, you get to know people. You get to know faces, you get to know secretaries get to know parents, guards come down,
Right.
risk goes up.
Right.
Does the school keep doors locked and check ID every single time you go to the school, or do they make exceptions? Oh, well, Clara, I know you. Come
Yep,
on in.
come on in.
Come get your grandkids.
Right.
Do they make exceptions because they know you?
Mm-hmm.
If so, they shouldn't. And
I
actually,
know-
our school doesn't.
I know that bothers some people to hear that, but honestly, once these rule breakings begin to happen, and everything becomes so flexible that it's well,
You just get lax.
you get very lazy, and then bad things happen. Yes.
Well, here's why this is such a big deal, too. Parental custody changes
Yes.
and domestic abuse charges, they change and they're fluid. A parent who has custody of a kid this week may not next
right,
week.
Exactly right.
Our court, I mean, I could sit at the steps of our court, which is a mile up the road, and I can watch families in and out all day long,
It's constant.
5 days a week.
Yeah, it is. It's constantly changing, and there's not always, very seldom, I should say, a quick notification to the school as to what the change is. So the school doesn't know. So when dad, who has now been banned out of the life of a child, comes to pick up that child, you can't expect the school to know.
Well, I would say verbally. I think the courts are pretty good about making those changes to the school. At least I would like to think.
I would like to think. Doesn't always
Whether
happen,
they do or
Jimmy.
not in
Yeah,
practice, I don't
It
know.
doesn't always happen in a timely manner. It really doesn't.
But the issue is if it does change on paper, and George, who's been coming up to pick his kids up for the last 6 months, is still coming up, and the staff doesn't know that anything is different as far as custody. That's a problem.
It's a big problem.
So that
Yes.
what they do at my kids' school, and I appreciate it. They know who I am. I know who they are. We're on a first name basis. Every time I come in, they say, "Do you have your ID with you?" And I have to pull my ID out and put it down. And they don't just look at it. They actually open up the book and they look at authorized people who are there to pick up my kids, and they check my ID against that name. I like that.
I love it. And speaking of showing ID and whatnot, Jimmy grew up in an even smaller school district where I still live, this year they had 17 in their graduating class. So that will tell you how small that school district is. I served on the school board for 15 years. Every one of us who were on the school board had to show our ID before entering the building.
Yeah.
And we insisted on that simply because of the reasons you said, Jimmy. When you become lazy, you become lax, and mistakes are made, and children get caught in that mess. So
Yeah,
it's important to
think
have
about
consistency.
Yeah, I mean, think about how abusers work. Like they reside in people's comfort zones.
Sure. Absolutely.
They're masters at getting walls to come down.
Yeah.
They don't get nervous. They don't get worked up. They're not anxious. They come in and they fill up a room.
Right.
They're the life of that room. They're the life of the party.
Absolutely.
They know how to greet people, how to be socially adaptable. That's what they do. So it's vital. It's vital that they have
Plus,
good, consistent security measures.
we need to not fight that system. Sometimes parents don't like it.
Well, I come and I pick my kid up every day, and you know who
me.
I am.
Yes,
Yep.
yep. You know me.
Doesn't matter.
It does not matter. So, I feel bad for teachers or for whoever is at the keeper of the gate, so to speak, when parents do that. But parents, remember, this is for your children.
Yes.
For all children.
Absolutely.
Right.
Number 2, do schools have good training available for staff, and do they stay current on abuse trends? That's really important because, I assume that most schools do required trainings, but maybe that's the wrong assumption to make.
I think it is a wrong assumption, Jimmy. I think a group of teachers from a school are required to be trained. And they are kind of the lookout post for schools, but I don't believe it's mandatory for all schools to have all staff trained. I don't, and I wish some of you who are listening, if you know different, post that under the video when you watch it. Let us know, update us, because I'm not current with every state.
I do know that, in Pennsylvania, because of the Jerry Sandusky stuff, we have legislation that requires all school teachers to go through, I think it's Act 136, that training, which I absolutely loathe. Let's just be honest. It's a terrible training.
I will be honest. I don't even know if I call that a training.
Yeah, I've been through it multiple times, and it is painful. It is just painful.
It is.
Anyway, that's the training that's required in Pennsylvania. That satisfies the law, and most schools aren't going to pump money into additional training when they're meeting the required training. So
True.
It's a 3-hour click through, yawn your way through, boring.
It is. It's
very ambiguous training
it is.
on abuse.
Right.
So
what you're talking about is updated training.
Is it actually practical?
Wanted, would be a live person, have a trainer come in, do the training, have question and answer, that type of thing.
Yes.
That is ideal.
Yeah. Number 3, do schools train their students to look for predators and teach them how to report? This is a huge one. And I don't think that many schools train their kids how to report, or who to report to, or what they can report, what is reportable.
Right.
There should be a system in place where if a student is being intimidated by somebody in-house, i.e. a school teacher, or really anybody on staff, but typically a school teacher,
a janitor, anyone in a higher position than the student.
Right. There should be a mechanism in place where that student can brazenly and boldly go in and report that anonymously, or if they see another student being harassed, because this is a case a lot.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research on school teachers who sexually violate the students, and almost inevitably there are peers who, they see this activity going on.
Right.
They have great concerns
And they
about
don't know what
the
to
sexual
do or where to
harassment,
go. Right.
and they don't know who to tell. Who do you
Right.
report it to? The teacher who's doing it?
Right.
And a lot of these kids are locked in the room with that one teacher, or a handful of teachers, or other teachers who are best friends with the teacher who's the predator. Who do you report it to?
That's a bingo right there. And I saw that while serving on school board.
Right.
And it's terrifying for me to think of the student who is being abused, as well as the student who knows that
Right.
their friend is being abused, because they see this teacher's clique, and they are friends, and it's like, who do you go to? Who am I supposed to talk to?
It should not be a mystery to the students.
No,
it shouldn't be a mystery.
Sadly.
And there should be a chain of command where somebody who's not buddy with
Right.
all the school teachers, for example, like a Title IX coordinator. We talked about that in the episode with
did.
Laura Dunn.
Yes.
I think that was like episode 86. I just looked it up today because I passed it on to somebody. But, you should know who the Title IX coordinator is. The parents should know, and the students should know. And the best way to find out is to ask your kids, if somebody's making you uncomfortable, who are you going to tell? If they can't answer that,
Jimmy,
that's a problem.
That's scary, and I doubt many kids can answer that.
I doubt it too. But find out. You should know. You should ask your kids this.
Right.
And there was an incident recently with my daughter, and in my opinion, it was handled well. There are other things at the school that really disappoint me, but this was a student who was harassing her in a group of friends, and they reported it to a teacher. That teacher took it up the proper chain of command, and I got a phone call, immediately after the person at the school who called me. I don't want to say positions or anything, but the person who called me said, I literally just found out and just spoke with your daughter, so I don't have all the information right now, but I wanted to call you as a courtesy and let you know this is what we know so far. This is what we're going to do. We're going to review the tapes. There were video cameras that caught it. And he said, we will take swift and immediate action. And he said, you can feel free to follow up at any time.
That's
you can
great.
call me.
That is great.
I thought it was
That's
handled
great.
really well.
Yeah, that's great communication.
Yeah.
That's great. Yes.
So, and my daughter knows.
That's a good
and I asked her
example.
what happened. And she told me who she and her friends reported it. They reported as a group. And they knew who to go to because it's been communicated to them.
Right. That's
so
awesome.
kudos
That's good. Yes.
to the school for
Absolutely.
that. Number 4, do schools communicate who the Title IX coordinator is and what his or her role is, and what are considered violations and how parents can report to that Title IX coordinator. That's where our school gets a bad grade. That is not communicated to parents or the students, and I don't know why, but I need to follow up on that because that's a huge deal.
I think that's key, and it's key to get that information out, not just to the students, but like you said, to parents also. And then when parents are having these conversations with children, a parent can follow up and say,
Yep.
did you go to the Title IX coordinator? Or we will go together to the Title IX coordinator,
Yeah.
however they choose to do. But that person is a key cornerstone in all of this. So
that's how you keep your kids safe, right?
Right.
When any kind of bullying or harassment, and it doesn't have to be sexual for Title IX. And
Right.
go back and listen to Laura Dunn. It was a really good episode because she
yes.
laid it all out, right?
That was awesome. Yes.
She really spelled out very clearly what violations fall within the range of Title IX, and they have to provide some kind of a plan of action,
Right.
and they have to inform the parents. So that's something that I really
think
want
that's
to coordinate.
critical. That one point there. If there's any one takeaway you're getting from today's podcast, I think that is a critical one.
Is that you do
Yeah.
have options available,
Right.
and Title IX is regulated by the federal government, and
Right.
no school wants the federal government breathing down their spine.
Amen. That means money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
you know, they need to have this stuff, and they're required by law to let parents know
Right.
who the Title IX coordinator is, and they need to tell the students. So, you know, if they're not doing it, they're actually violating federal law. Number 5, are schools transparent with communication? That's really important because, again, that's another one where I think our school probably gets a D-.
I think there are a lot
And
of
they're
schools
probably
that
doing
would get
they're probably doing well compared to the
better.
average school
Yeah,
in the
you're
United
right.
States
You
of America.
are correct. You are correct.
So
yes.
There is this really radical culture of cover up, whether schools like that language or not. That's
It's
what it
a code
is.
of secrecy, honestly,
Yes.
that they live by.
And you were on the
that
school board long
I
enough
was,
that you
and
know.
I know that code of secrecy is there, and it's viable, and it is used.
Yep.
And that's when you go into these meetings, and you are told that you keep your mouth quiet. And you were told in no uncertain terms you carry outside of that meeting what you discussed in there. And honestly, I saw and heard things that were definitely not handled properly.
And that were
Not at
definitely
all.
abuse.
Definitely abuse.
I mean,
big time
yeah.
abuse. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So, you know, schools absolutely have to be transparent with their communication. They shouldn't be hiding scandals. They shouldn't have, you know, I wrote in the notes here, does the tail end up wagging the dog? You know, in other words, are there one or two semi-influential people? Just usually it's people who have really good personalities. They're charming. Everybody likes them. Do they end up making decisions on behalf of the school board or influencing the school board to overlook major infractions? That's a big deal. If that's going on,
It's a huge deal.
if a school
Right.
teacher is able to go to the school board and be like, look, you know, at the next meeting, I really don't think you guys should talk about, you know, Mr. Jones, who was, you know, caught looking down the shirt of one of the students or whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
If a teacher is able to influence the school board because they're friends of his or hers on the school board, that's never okay. And one of the things that schools do is they'll take a problematic teacher. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I know
take
right what you're going to say.
A problematic teacher who has multiple complaints, whether it's performance or they're harassing students verbally, even sexually.
Shoving, pushing. We had incidences of that, of actual hitting, locking students in the closet because they didn't want to deal with that student. These
Yep.
are real life issues that were going on.
So as part of their discipline, and this is, I don't know if this is like a verbal, like code language for we're dealing with it, but they take that teacher and they'll move them to another school within the district, or they'll move them to another grade.
It happened time and time again. Move them to another grade. Take them out of that grade, put them in
It
another
makes no
one.
sense.
It makes no sense. Or move them from a classroom that is in this end of the building to that end of the building. Made no sense whatsoever. But that's how it was done. After all, he's a great teacher. We would
Yeah.
always hear that. And who would we get to replace him? Who would we get to replace her? You know, how, there are a group of students that love this teacher. You know, how could we do without this person?
Yep.
Every excuse in the book.
And if you don't think that's going on in 2021
yeah.
right now
Those are-
as I'm
yeah.
talking into this microphone, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is going on everywhere. Pay attention and find out and ask questions about why teachers are being shuffled. If there's one teacher in particular who keeps getting shuffled from classroom to classroom and is always moving
There's
around,
an issue.
something's going on.
Oh, yeah.
There is definitely an issue with
an
that
issue.
teacher,
Yeah,
and
there is.
that's part of the quote-unquote discipline. Find out why. Find out why this teacher is being shuffled, and you're probably not ever going to get a straight answer. But if they're evading the question, and if they start getting all goofy on you, I would raise even more questions, and I would be the parent who's shown up at board meetings and demanding an answer and being like, look, like clearly there's a problem with this teacher.
School boards do not like that parent that comes, but that parent has every right and every responsibility to be there asking those questions.
Yeah.
And I wish every parent understood that. I didn't until I actually sat on the school board. You know, most of the time, these are elected officials, and we accept what they give us. We accept that they're doing what's best for our children. Keep in mind, too, that you have the teachers' union that is strong. Teachers' union will, I was told, back a teacher for everything except for murder. And I found that to be true.
Yeah.
And that is true.
I think it's still very much true today.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
we've not learned many lessons from all the publicity and all the lawsuits. And I mean, I Googled this, I don't know, 6 months ago. Lawsuits in Pennsylvania, schools being sued for sexual harassment of students. I'm telling you guys,
it's rampant. It really is.
Page after page after page of multi-million-dollar lawsuits per school district. Those were current. Those were this past school year. That's in the middle of COVID.
Most of those will go nowhere. Yeah, nowhere. Yeah.
So it's happening.
We need to change the tide. We need to change things.
Yeah. Number 6, are school activities monitored or defensive walls come down? For example, school dances, parents' night, science fairs, graduations, etc., etc. Ask yourself when you walk inside of a school building, are these events a pedophile's dream? Put yourself in the shoes of a pedophile. Are these events a pedophile's dream because of super easy access to children? If so, changes need to be made. And again, if I were to rate my school, I would probably rate an F- on this. They are fantastic when school is in session. When it's 8 o'clock to 2:30, my school gets an A to an A plus.
Right.
They're phenomenal. They have resource officers. At my son's preschool kindergarten graduation, we went to the school and they did a slideshow with the kids putting up a sign of what they want to be when they grow up. You want to know what probably 3/4, that's not an exaggeration, 3/4 of the graduating kindergarten classes, you know what they wanted to be? Police officer.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Natalie leaned over and she's like, boy, there are a lot of kids that she's like, our police force is going to be full in about
That's awesome.
12 years or so.
That's cute.
She's like, why do so many of them want to be cops? And I was like, because they see the police
see them
officers
all day.
in the
Yeah,
school
they see
all day
them
long.
all day
And
long.
our
Yeah,
police officers are great. I
Right.
love
They are.
love our borough
They are
police
wonderful.
officers.
They truly
They're
are.
great. I'm
Yeah.
good friends with
They are.
several. They're wonderful.
They are terrific.
Our school gets an A during school hours. When we have special events, I hyperventilate.
During
like,
basketball,
my
I'm
goodness.
thinking basketball games, volleyball games, things like that. There's kids running in and out everywhere, unescorted, all through the building.
Parents.
Parents gathered.
We can
talking,
go wherever we want.
Yeah, wherever. And there is no monitoring,
Nope.
really. Very, very little.
Bathrooms,
monitoring.
which are a super
yeah.
high risk
No, there's
area
no
for sexual
monitoring
assault
there.
of children.
Right.
I can walk into any bathroom in my kids' school, any activity that they have that's an after-school activity. I can walk right in a bathroom with
Right.
1 or 10 kids and it's not monitored.
We've improved in that we have recognition that these problems exist, but we haven't improved what to do about that recognition of the problems.
Right.
We don't have any guidelines, anything in place. We do during that 8 to 2:30 period, but after that, it's the fence comes down.
Yep.
The playground is open.
Because teachers clocked out, they went home, and who are you going to get to volunteer that's has all their background checks and clearances and is trained, has all their trainings, and who are you going to get to stand and monitor bathrooms?
Until something happens, parents need to step up to the plate more also to make sure they're with their kids in the hallway, that they're not just sending kids out everywhere. Even in the outside, I'm thinking where the cars are parked. That's a huge area where a lot of not so nice stuff happens.
I had to go pick up one of my kids who was playing soccer. We were at my son's. I keep wanting to say preschool. He's in.
It's not preschool.
He just graduated kindergarten.
Yeah.
I had to leave, before it was completely done. And I got up and, it was packed in there. And I just got up and walked out. And I look around and I go in the lobby and there are parents, they're mixing and mingling in the halls and in the lobby. And, some are walking down the hallways where the classrooms are. No staff was around.
Being monitored. No. Yeah.
Absolutely zero accountability. So, those are things that definitely need improved, but you're right. Like it's up to us parents.
I think right now the burden is on us.
Yep.
More than the school because it takes time for that type of change to occur. So the burden
still needs to happen. But you're right.
The
burden right now.
The burden right now is ours.
It falls on the parents to protect their kids.
Yes.
And then finally, number 7, does your school pass the trash?
I like that phrase, by the way.
Yeah, it's not mine. I wish I could take credit. Some legislature somewhere either came up with the term or a parent or a survivor of abuse came up with it. But it's great.
Yeah.
So passing the trash means you take somebody who has allegations of abuse and you let them quietly sneak out instead of firing them, instead of pressing charges. You let them quietly sneak out. They slip away into the dark of the night, and they reinvent themselves. They show up at another school district that's unsuspecting. They apply, and the school will even give glowing recommendations.
That's the one thing that made me furious. Sitting in those school board meetings.
If you resign quietly, we'll give you a letter of recommendation.
Yes. And that went on very, very clearly. That went on. And that was actually the wording that was said. If you just leave.
Yep.
If you just leave, you won't have any marks against you. And, and that happened. They would leave.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah.
Off to another place.
I think now in Pennsylvania that has tightened up a lot. A lot of states have passed the trash legislation. You can Google it, look it up, or if you don't use Google, use Bing.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
But look it up. Look up pass the trash legislation and find out if your state has passed the trash legislation. I believe Pennsylvania does. So we make it illegal for teachers who've been fired on some kind of an infraction for abuse or alleged abuse of any kind. We make it illegal to not notify all the other school districts and say, look,
that's how it should
this
be.
is why this person had to go. This is why. Here are the records. Passing the trash, I think, applies especially to private schools. It's still prevalent in public schools because of tenure and the union and all that
union.
stuff. But especially with private schools and private Christian schools. I just had 2 cases this week where I talked with people who they had an abuser at a
And
private
it was all kept quiet. And,
Christian school.
Right.
And I mean, clear, there is no way around it. It was a clear, full-on abuse, multiple victims, and those schools buried this deep. And they just shuffled them.
It's so sad. It really, really is.
And then it's somebody else's problem. That's the way they look at it.
Right. Yeah.
So,
That bothers me so bad. You have no idea. You have no idea how that bothers me.
I know.
Because that's clearly so wrong to do.
Yeah.
Pass the trash.
Yep.
Trash it is, yes.
Yep. It's happening.
We have big
everywhere.
burdens on us. Every parent, grandparent, everybody that is involved with children in any way, shape, or form, we need to be fully aware of the reality that this stuff does go on. The harm that is done is not a joke, is for real, is deep, is lingering. Many people never recover fully from abuse.
Yep.
And we tend to lighten the word abuse somehow, some way, making it almost like, well, they're just a kid. They'll get, they'll get over it. Not always. Not always. The trauma is there. It is up to us to protect our children.
Yeah.
In the end. Schools can do so much. Churches can do so much. Civic arenas can do so much. But the full burden is on us, really, to continue to push for legislation, to push for stricter laws to protect, our children. But until then, man, they got to be under our wings. They are our kids. They are our precious cargo.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. Couldn't say it better. Leads us to our truth bomb for the day. Get involved with your school. Know what's going on.
Amen. Yes.
Take this checklist. Yes. I'll put, for this one, it's so important. I mean, all of them are important, but I will put chapters in the YouTube video of this so that you can easily skip to each one of these and go back if you want to re-listen. I'll put chapters to
that
these.
Would be great, Jimmy. And that's a lot of work for you to do. And I don't know if people understand the hours that you put into this. I don't do any of this technical stuff. Obviously, Jimmy is the brains here.
Well,
he don't get a big head. He, when there are outlines and things and links and all of that, Jimmy has done it. And that doesn't just happen. That takes hours of work. So thank you from all of us. Thank you, Jimmy.
It's worth it. Get involved. Know what's going on at your school. If you don't know, find out.
Right.
Well, thank you for tuning into this episode, and we will catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. If you found it helpful, please follow on Spreaker and search for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. If you believe in what we do, consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron. And check out the cool rewards our patrons receive. Share with your friends and tell the world. Join us in speaking out on sex abuse so we can change the tides and prevent abuse.